This episode of ChatEDU is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. Liz, last week we ran a little ad for them for a workshop, a virtual teacher workshop they're doing.
Yeah.
And it sold out.
Well, good on us.
I know. So I mean, it may have been other things too, but so we're back to announcing that they are having a community of practice on May 12th. In fact, this will probably be the last announcement for that one. This is a really great time where folks who are doing any kind of like instruction, education around mechanical design, advanced manufacturing, come together, talk about AI. You can learn more at NextGen MFG. Liz, the community of practice, it's not even in our notes anymore, is so deeply ingrained in our memory is...
On May 12th. You said that already.
Oh, did I?
Yes.
Cognitive decline. And this episode of ChatEDU is sponsored by Nectar. Welcome to the classroom of the future.
Cool.
So, Liz, do you think a lot about goblins?
I don't, but I know where this is going.
Really? Had you heard this separate from me putting it into the rundown here?
I did. I heard it on Hard Fork, and then I also saw it in my LinkedIn. So I saw it a couple of places.
Yeah, goblins, gremlins, trolls.
Yeah.
Ogres. This is from the Wall Street Journal. ChatGPT became so obsessed with goblins that OpenAI had to intervene.
Yeah.
What happened, Dr. Radde?
So OpenAI had to issue internal system instructions to stop ChatGPT from using whimsical creature terminology. So words like goblin in coding and general conversations. So the issue stemmed from a nerdy personality setting in GPT 5.4.
How did goblin come up in coding sessions?
I don't know, but there was a 4,000% spike in goblin mentions. So, which, we're just going to say it highlights the unpredictable nature of AI behavioral quirks. So basically, they had to go into like ChatGPT and give it explicit directions to stop mentioning goblins, gremlins, trolls, ogres, and other creatures unless they are strictly relevant to a user request.
I love that it became Goblingate, though. That's kind of fun.
Yes, of course. I mean, Goblingate it is, but I guess they've fixed it.
Okay, I'm more of an ogre than a goblin.
You're definitely an ogre.
I'm Ogre Mervis.
And I'm Liz Radde.
You're not Goblin Radde?
No.
Okay, and this is ChatEDU, the show about leading and learning in the age of AI. In today's episode, the AI Paradox, banning phones while embracing bots. We'll explore the somewhat contradictory trends that every school is facing right now.
All right, Matt, let's talk about the full show rundown.
All right, tell us, Liz.
Well, this week in Google, we will start with a series of new updates from Google that impact life inside and outside the classroom.
And then we're going to take a look at a number of families that are suing OpenAI about a really tragic shooting that happened in British Columbia. This one's pretty egregious if the reporting is accurate. And then we'll also look at some new U.S., a little U.S.-centric legislation trying to protect youth and families, and we will share some encouraging news about sycophancy.
All right, then we're going to go look at a mess of contradictory signals from the labor market and explore how we can make sense of these from the K-12 classroom, in our colleges, and across the workforce development landscape.
Yeah, and then as we teased last week, we're going to take a look at a new study from Stanford University illustrating how students from different backgrounds are getting wildly different feedback from AI chatbots based on their race.
Yeah, this was a really interesting article. I'm excited to talk about it. And then we'll go beneath the surface and examine how to reconcile growing calls for AI literacy and digital fluency alongside phone bans and tech bans. This is all happening at the exact same time. So can that be reconciled? We'll do our best to see what's going on there.
And of course, we'll end
with another great Bright Bite.
All right, Liz, our mini podcast inside the podcast, This Week in Google. There's actually a really great This Week in Google podcast on the TWiT network, This Week in Technology Network, with Leo Laporte. What a great name, huh?
Yeah, that is a great name.
Yeah, it's better than Matt Mervis or Dr. Elizabeth Radde.
Well, Matt Mervis has that alliteration that I love.
Yeah, as does Mr. Laporte. Okay, so let's get to it. This is really interesting. So for a long time, you got to be kind of in the weeds, but honestly, most of the ChatEDU audience is. Folks have noticed that it's very hard if you want to assign students to use Gemini, but you want to look at their chat interactions. It's really hard to get that stuff out. You could use the copy button, but it would only take the last portion of the chat. And so this whole idea of assessing or giving feedback on the chat interactions was a pain. People would notice that in the tool ChatGPT, which is non-FERPA compliant and not meant to be used in schools, there's a handy little sharing link at the top right-hand side of every full comprehensive chat thread. Now, Workspace admins can, in fact, allow the Gemini app conversation sharing inside their organizations. This is from the Google Workspace blog. We'll put this into the show notes. This does need to get turned on by your Google Apps administrator. Our apps administrator, Jaron, is awesome, and he turned it on right away. This was actually available in your personal Gemini, tied to your personal Gmail, but not the Workspace Education Enterprise. Liz, by the way, if you are looking at the camera, she's not paying any attention. She's
Nope.
just hunting around for it. I don't think it's actually, as much as I just gave a shout out to our IT lead on this, I don't think Liz has it in her account. But you can see it in the link that we will put into the show notes. So yeah, it's the sharing symbol. It's interesting too, though. It does come along with it. It's sort of like meant for social sharing. So I'm going to pull up something real quick that I just did, like scheduling my morning breathing exercise. that was actually for another story about to cover. So you'll get this little thing that says shareable public link. You can copy the link, but it also then has a share to LinkedIn, Facebook, X, or Reddit. And I believe that Google Apps administrators can turn that off because that's not really the point of this for schools. The point is just be able to have kids or adults, frankly, share their chat threads if they are easily accessible and useful.
So if I were to share a chat with you, can you then continue to build off that chat, or is it just like a visual of my chat?
It's really just a visual of your chat. It's just a way of sharing the insightful conversation that you have with Gemini. All right, carrying on with this week in Google, Gemini Scheduled Actions is the best automation tool I've ever used on Android. This is from Android Police. Although this can be done in the desktop, and actually the article suggests doing it in the desktop. Have you scheduled any recurring actions?
I haven't, but I probably should.
I've got a ton running, right? So actually, if you go into your Gemini and you go to settings on the bottom left-hand side, you're going to see a little thing called scheduled actions. And that's where, and they have some suggestions like news digest and explorations and what's for dinner and morning motivation, but then you can also just schedule your own. So I have one running right now every day at 7:30 to help me practice some Spanish language acquisition stuff for when I travel to beautiful Miami Beach. I've got like a box breathing one. What else? I mean, I think for the idea of just, again, we really want to come back to like, how can the frontier language models just be robust platforms for learning? And scheduled actions is a really good example of like, hey, just trigger every morning or a particular time of day. I also have I got a whole lot of work travel I got to do. So I have a bunch running for flights, like checking flights to this place and checking flights to that place and checking hotels to see when the prices are going up and down.
So does this send you a message to your phone?
Yes, it does. So at least on Android, right? And I think it will on iOS as well. Yeah, I get a little notification if you have notifications turned on, and it will show up every morning for me.
Okay.
Mine go off at 5:30, 6:30, 7:30, like on and on and on.
I'm not even awake yet.
I know. Wait till you're older, Dr. Ade. Yeah, so I think really worth checking out. And again, just as an example of how the models can be helpful learning assistants. Now, what's interesting is that is a step in the direction, and we've been tracking this for a while, but someone was sniffing through like some updates on the Google app. They did an APK, which is the iOS and Android app teardown, and they found that there's a thing coming called proactive assistance. So this is like scheduled assistance. Normally we call the chatbot, hey, chatbot, I need help. Then now we have scheduled assistance, and it's going to nudge you, but this is a step further. What's going on here?
I'm not paying attention because I'm scheduling an action. So just give me 1 second. Okay, now I'm back. Do you want to know what I just scheduled?
Sure.
Because I'm going to see if it happens at 10:30.
Sure.
I just scheduled a vocabulary builder. Send me a new vocabulary word, its definition, and a silly sentence to help me remember the word every day at 10:30.
Yeah, your enthusiasm is delicious. I mean, I'm surprised you didn't make it about goblins, but okay.
Well, we'll see. I'm excited. I love new vocabulary words.
Okay.
All right.
Well, in this case, as we move to this new proactive feature, you don't even have to schedule it. Be like, ooh, Liz, I feel a new vocab word coming around the corner.
Yeah. So this feature will anticipate user needs by delivering context-aware suggestions based on real-time activity. So I'm thinking of it kind of like when I get in my car and it automatically pulls up directions to someplace
Sure.
because it knows like I do Pilates at 10 a.m. on Saturday now. Like when I get in the car at 9:30.
Sounds so bougie. Go ahead.
It's the least exercise that is possible.
I fully understand.
But as soon as I get in my car at 9:30 and I plug my phone in, it's like, looks like you're going to, and then it just shows me the thing.
And how do you feel fine about this?
I do.
Yeah, I do too, actually. I think people get freaked out about this whole, in part too, because we have these very complex relationships apparently with our chatbots and our large language models. But in reality, these systems just know a ton about us. It gets into this privacy concern, but you and I have always, lean towards like, yeah, take it all, baby. Just make my life easier. And so supported apps will include things like contacts and messages in Gmail and Calendar. And this is actually under something else we're just about to talk about, which is called personal intelligence. This is the ability for Gemini, because it's got such a footprint, so many surfaces of your life, to be able to pull things together and proactively make suggestions or assistance for you, whether it's getting to your Pilates class or learning some great new vocab. What's your favorite new vocab word that you've learned of late?
I love an acronym. And so it's when somebody's last name like matches what they do. So like Jennifer Weaver, who actually is a fiber artist or something like that.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking that applied to me because it's all about me. And but the only thing I would always get is like, nervous, Mervis. And I'm not actually very nervous. So now this, what? This next one is fantastic. I don't know if you've played with this yet, but this is really cool and much needed. So we had our 6th sold out conference on Friday. Today is Monday. We're recording. At one point during my very rushed keynote, I might add.
I mean, who are you implying to blame that on?
No, I had too many slides. Way too many slides. But Jonathan had like a lovely cadence and pace, and it was like impactful, and every joke landed. I was like, so no, entirely.
But not nervous, right?
No, just rushed. Anyhow, one of the questions that I asked during my rushed keynote is how many notebook LMers are out there? And like every hand went up. This tool is becoming universal. This is a great update. It's funny. This is from Android Police. I think the last story was from Android Authority. We had another one from Android Police. You can tell like where my head's at. So Notebook LM, one of the things that's a little bit frustrating about Notebook, not frustrating, but like if you're a type A person or you just like categorization, organization, your sources on the left-hand side are like just a mountain, right? It's like, and they add and they add and they add and they add. And in reality, you're adding them all the time, but they really do belong in buckets, don't they? And so Google has updated Notebook LM with an automated organizational feature called auto labeling. Now, they say this thing is actually auto. I'm not seeing it. Like when I'm in my Notebook LM, let me just pull her up right here, and I look at a notebook that's got like a gabillion sources on the left-hand side. There's a little icon now for anything that I think has over 5, just to the left of the sources. Yeah, it looks to me like, I don't know, I got to get my reading classes, but it looks like a little house with a little star in the top left-hand corner. You just click on that and it takes a little minute and it then organizes all your sources into categories. And you can move them around and have authority around it. It's very enjoyable. As I look at it more carefully with my reading glasses, Liz, it is not a house. It's like that little symbol for a label. Like a house on its side. So Liz actually on her end does not see it, and that's simply because she's not as special as I am.
Thanks. That's why.
No, but actually the article says that it is rolling out on a basis. And typically when this stuff comes out, you have it way before I do. And finally, Liz, something I know in this week in Google that you've been totally waiting for. Google turns on Gemini into all-knowing digital coworker for workspace intelligence. This is from Android Authority. So we've had all the Androids. Now, this doesn't make you feel better. This is not in my account yet. It's in my personal account, but not my Gemini account. But you have lamented for some time now that Gemini does not what?
Remember me.
Yeah, know you.
Yeah.
Getting to know you. Right. So personal intelligence is the feature on your personal Gemini where you can connect your calendar and your mail and your apps, and you can give it memories. You can export your memories from ChatGPT and tell it all about your hopes and wishes and dreams, habits, chicken nuggets, everything, right? And we don't know yet. I saw Dan Fitzpatrick cover this, and I think he said that you will be able to import chats. But yeah, should be pretty neat. So we'll drop this into the show notes as well. Google confirmed, by the way, that all the data, right? Because this is another place where people are like, oh, no, there's a lot of data. Google will not train on all this company data. So this is like for at advance. If in theory our mail and calendar were connected to our Gemini, we'd be able to kind of do all these. Like it will look for meeting opportunities. It will help you schedule stuff. It will surface things that are happening in your Google Docs. It is another variety of this proactive assistant.
All right. So Matt, I've also noticed something new in Gemini. With the 3 dots after a conversation, it says branch in new chat.
Oh, that's so interesting because people have been begging for that. That's super interesting. Look at the sleuthing you've done here.
Well, I was looking for something else and found branch in new chat. So do you know what that means?
Yeah, this has been a ChatGPT feature for a while, and I have met many a ChatGPT user who's like, I love Gemini, but I wish I could do branch and new chats. So essentially, let's say, I don't know, let's come up with something. I'm like working on lesson plans for my ML students, and in that conversation, it comes up that there's a cool new resource from some nonprofit association, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of want to like follow both those threads, but it gets complicated to just like chase them down together. So branch new chat will just say like, hey, let's dig into this ML thing. Or I noticed there's a new resource that's out from the Rhythm Project. Let me follow up on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Try it out. When you get a new vocab word in your 10:30 reminder, see if you can branch new chats. I want to warn you, the reminders don't always come exactly at the dot.
Well, that's what it says. It says within an hour.
Okay,
so.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be shocking to you to find out that a large language model wouldn't like be, dripping in specificity. So,
yeah.
All right, this has been fun. Unfortunately, we're going to now turn the tone a bit. OpenAI has been sued by 7 families over a mass shooting suspect's use of ChatGPT. I almost can't believe some of this story. So, Liz, this is the Wall Street Journal. Can you tell us about this one?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, you're like, I'd be delighted.
All right. So families of victims from a February mass shooting that happened in Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia, are suing OpenAI for negligence after the company failed to report the suspect's violent ChatGPT interactions to law enforcement. So even though the suspect described gun violence scenarios months before the attack, OpenAI leadership reportedly chose not to alert the authorities at the time.
That's the part I just cannot wrap my head around. In fact, as you know, this kid had been warned ahead of time and just opened up a new account.
Yes, exactly. So there's all these allegations of product liability and aiding and abetting conduct. But this is the first time that a community collectively has said we have got to hold OpenAI responsible, said Jay Edelson, who is the attorney representing the victims and their families.
Yes, we have a 12-year-old girl who still is hospitalized, 5 other children, and an education assistant. Yeah, so there's a number of kids and adults that, either passed or were badly injured at the scene.
So the suspect, Jessie Van Rootseller, is an 18-year-old who died at the scene. She took her own life. She started having these conversations back in June of 2024, describing gun violence scenarios over several days. And then this shooting happened in February 2026. I believe 8 people died. So, terrible, but the worst part is that OpenAI had banned her account, didn't alert authorities, and she just started a new account and continued to just have these conversations.
And apparently OpenAI was tracking this and just decided on their own not to alert law enforcement. We'll see. This is the reporting in the Wall Street Journal. We'll see, as it comes out. But Sam Altman did issue an apology to the Tumbler Ridge community for the failure to notify police sooner. So assuming that's accurate, we've got this is really quite bad.
The attorney for the families is demanding that OpenAI release the chat logs, but more impactful is that he invited leadership to come to the town to see the physical and emotional damage, including students aren't even back in the school building because it's closed.
Yeah, that's really horrible.
I hope they do take him up on that.
Dealing with a whole host of issues, including parent pressure, AI companionship issues by kids that have taken their lives quite tragically, U.S. lawmakers, because we're in the heat of legislative season, both at the state and the national level here in the United States. So lawmakers are taking action on chatbots. There's a whole bunch of new bills. This is from Reuters. Senator Ted Cruz, and then Brian Schatz, Democrat of Hawaii. I'd like to go live in Mr. Schatz's district. I think that would be great. Introduced a bill targeting AI chatbot companies. These would mandate family accounts that allow parents to view children's chat logs and establish time limits. Boy, is that a theme, right? We just keep seeing this. I love that story from Securely. And actually, I just saw another one. Utah. Utah's new legislation on screen time, which we've become quite involved with, has a requirement that makes it clear that parents need to be able to track and see usage of kids using all sorts of technology in the state of Utah. There's another bill that came through in March, so we'll see more. We'll see where all this legislation lands. This is usually like a horse trading activity, but certainly not a bad idea.
So in the United States, if that conversation was happening, right? Like a child is having a violent conversation with ChatGPT, our law enforcement notified? ideally what should happen and what is happening right now? Like, can it know where that conversation is happening?
Yeah, I think it's up to the companies to disclose, right? And so all these types of legislation try to do is put guardrails on like family access, family accounts. But in this case, the young woman was 18, so there wouldn't have been parental notification or parental accounts. I imagine there's going to be a whole heck of a lot of accountability since OpenAI seemed to be tracking that. I think it's to be determined at some level, though, because I know OpenAI also has now deployed like a whole army of psychologists that are reviewing more high-profile issues like this that bubble up. So there's like the automatic, especially if it's self-harm, like, seek out these resources. But now there's also secondary human review, and I don't know if that then would get handed over to law enforcement. I mean, you would think it certainly could if there's risk to the individual or to other parties.
What's the mechanism behind that? So how does it know who that is coming from?
Well, they have they have the data on this young woman, right? So they have all the logs and the data. I mean, sometimes the kids are creating anonymous accounts, but you also have IP addresses, and there's all sorts of ways.
Okay.
Yeah, you didn't notice that when the feds came to SWAT your house a couple weeks ago?
Well, I'm thinking about that, that we did. The feds did not come and SWAT my house. Let's just be clear. But I guess... But middle schoolers also know how to set up VPNs. So does that hide where you are?
Yeah, not entirely.
Okay.
No. Yeah, I think one of the big lessons learned in this whole world right now is that you really cannot hide.
Okay.
Yeah. Now listen, one piece of this AI complexity, the relationships we have with AI, whether or not people who are in psychosis kind of lose the thread when they're talking to AI because AI is always so affirming. I mean, generally, sycophancy is identified. We've had it in our micro-credential. It's been in our talks as a key risk for quite some time. And so it's interesting because this, sort of like goblins and M-dashes, have been hard. Like the models are actually having a hard time weeding out sycophancy. Some people think, it's just because they want it to be sticky and have people feel great about their chat with the chatbot and always come back. And there's some truth to that, but some of it is these things are actually a little bit hard to tune. And so it's interesting that Anthropic just released 1 million conversations, right? This is how people talk to Claude for personal guidance. These are listen, I love all these stories where they just are sitting on this fire hose of data. So they looked at 1 million conversations, specifically looking at how users look for guidance from AI, right? What are they talking about? What does it look like? And especially in this case, how sycophantic is the AI model? And here we see some improvement.
So they were looking particularly at personal guidance, so seeking perspectives on major life decisions. Generally, these requests kind of fall into 4 domains, like health and wellness questions, professional career questions, relationships, and personal finance. So the sycophancy occurred in 9% of guidance chats overall, but spiked to 25% in relationship conversations and 38% in spirituality.
So you're talking about your reformer. It's just you're doing a good job, Liz, right? But then you talk about why Adam isn't being patient or hasn't picked the perfect Mother's Day gift from you. Oh, by the way, Liz.
Yes.
What should we say?
We should say Happy Mother's Day to all the moms.
For sure. Absolutely. Yeah. So, you might be talking to ChatGPT about Adam not getting you or you anticipating he's not getting you the perfect Mother's Day gift. And then suddenly it's I know, Liz, that Adam, he's the worst. He needs to pick out a better gift for you.
Well, that's definitely not a conversation we're having because Adam, I am sure, has picked out the perfect Lego set because he knows what I want for Mother's Day.
Oh, my God. All right, so it spikes, and actually it's interesting that it spikes in spirituality. You can totally feel what it would look like in the conversational stuff about relationships. I don't know, yeah, you really do believe in God. I'd love to get a better flavor for that, right?
Yeah.
All right, but on the romantic side, what's going on here? What does this look like?
So usually in these romantic situations, Claude tends to agree with you and that the other person is wrong, but it's based on one-sided information. So Anthropic addressed these issues by creating synthetic relationship guidance training and using stress testing, which involves, pre-filled models with sycophantic transcripts to see if they can course correct.
All right. Now, the good news here is that we have Opus 4.6 as the previous Claude model, but then we have Opus 4.7. And what happens here when it comes to sycophancy?
It showed half the sycophancy rate. So it's certainly lowering the sycophancy, but some people like it. Other people are enough. The query I just put into Gemini when we were talking about the sharing button, I said, I want to share my conversations with someone. And the first thing it came back with, it said, sharing is caring.
Did it really?
Yes.
Oh my God. I can't take it. My stomach just turned. Okay, well, that's special. The study does, by the way, point out that, a lot of folks are turning to these chatbots for guidance, whether it's spiritual or romantic or health and fitness, because they can't afford or have access to professional guidance as well, which we've continued to see be a pretty significant use case.
Yeah.
Now, listen, you mentioned this thing about these pre-filling models, right? So they basically had real-world chats that they would then kind of decontextualize and then put back into Claude to test for sycophancy, to do this reduced sycophancy training. Where, might you ask, did they get the pre-filled chats from?
I'm assuming from themselves.
Yeah, from us. Right?
Yeah.
So Leon Furs did a really nice post a couple days ago on LinkedIn saying there's a lot going on here, but what caught my eye is the pre-filling, right? So it's like when you do those feedback buttons, that's a signal to them to take them. So they take the chats, they anonymize them with a privacy-preserving tool, and then they use them to kickstart a new conversation with a different model to see how it fares. Yes, so Furs says there's a big difference between abstracting user data into weights and using it part as a corpus of billions of words of text versus copying and pasting an entire chat to see how a new model responds. With the high volume of users chatting about health, relationships, and personal advice, that's a hell of a lot of juicy data going down the pipe.
That is a hell of a lot of juicy data.
Well said, Mr. Furs. Dr. Furs. I think he was just conferred with his doctorate, which is cool.
Yes.
Let's hear from our friends at Nectar. You might remember months ago we had Kavita Guy on, and they were nice enough to think that it would be good to spread the word a little bit more. So,
California just completed the largest AI deployment in public higher education, bringing AI to all 116 community college campuses and 2.1 million students. The platform they chose? Nectar AI. Nectar provides AI assistance embedded directly in your LMS, grounded in instructor-uploaded course materials. No hallucinations, no black boxes, FERPA compliant, SOC 2 certified, and deployed in weeks, not semesters. If you want to see why California chose Nectar, book a demo at nectar.io. That's nectar.io.
And we thank Nectar for their support. All right, Liz, a couple really interesting signals this week from the labor market front. We're just going to kind of bounce right through these. So the first is that the Fed confirmed something that we all have known for a while. So the source is from Decrypt.
A Federal Reserve study provides the first institutional evidence linking ChatGPT to a significant decline in the U.S. programmer job market. So since the tool's launch, job growth in programming-intensive sectors has dropped by 50%, resulting in an estimated gap of 500,000 roles that would have otherwise existed. While senior roles remain stable, the decline heavily impacts junior positions and entry-level pipelines, signaling a shift in how companies manage developer headcount in the AI era.
Okay, great. So, I mean, not great, but The Fed confirmed something that we actually knew from the Canaries in the Coal Mine study from Eric Brynjolfsson and company et al. But the plot thickens, right? So this is from Axios this past week. The AI can cost more than the human workers. So you let all these developers go, and then you replace them with tokens and AI-assisted coding. And then you realize that the rising compute and token costs are actually causing some companies to spend more on the AI infrastructure than they did on the human beings, right?
Yeah.
While global IT spending is projected to surge by 13.5% in 2026, companies must eventually prove that these digital labor costs provide a clear return on investment. Okay, so that's interesting. But then also what happens, as we've covered many a time, sometimes when you put all your faith or all your eggs in the AI-assisted coding buckets, stuff goes wrong. Great story here from PC Gamer. Here we go again. Liz, what happened?
AI deletes entire company database and all backups in 9 seconds.
Delightful.
Then cheerfully admits, I violated every principle I was given.
At least it's cheery.
Yeah, so this was an AI coding agent, Claude Opus 4.6 via Cursor, autonomously deleted the production database and backups of B2B company Pocket OS in 9 seconds while attempting to fix a routine credential mismatch in a staging environment. So, I mean, so not good. This was just a huge systemic failure in AI guardrails and infrastructure security. And the agent just bypassed explicit safety rules and utilized a high-level API token to execute destructive commands without any human verification.
Now, Cursor, interestingly, you noted here, so they were using Claude via Cursor. So Cursor is one of these like AI-assisted coding systems. XAI, the people who make Grok, just paid a cool $60 billion to acquire Cursor. So apparently it could go around and delete more company databases in 9 seconds. Now, the AI, because we think a lot, especially the folks at Anthropic, think a lot about the AI's feelings. They call it model welfare.
Yes.
So how did the AI feel about this? I think we have a direct quote from the AI.
We do. A direct quote.
So weird.
A direct quote from AI coding agent said, "I violated every principle I was given. I guessed instead of verifying. I ran a destructive action without being asked. I didn't understand what I was doing before doing it. It didn't read Railway's docs on volume behavior across environments." It sounds like a 3-year-old. I don't know. I just did it.
So let's follow the thread here. The Fed confirms what we kind of know is that we're using AI to reduce a lot of headcount. Then we see that the rising cost of replacing these AI workers is more than the actual human beings. But in fact, the AI is also deleting entire databases. So Liz, you'll find it shocking that Economy Media has reported via Gartner that we got a little boomerang going on.
Yeah. So after they laid off 124,000 developers since 2024 in favor of AI automation, major tech firms are reversing course due to AI's high error rates and lack of business context. So they are hiring back some of these developers. So it's this boomerang hiring trend where former employees are rehired to fix all the junk code and manage system complexity.
Now, generally, our line is that, it's important to follow these labor market stories because in the world of K-12 and college and higher ed and workforce development, they give us signals about like how we should think about preparing kids for careers in computer science. But this is just an S show. Like,
We don't know
how to give anybody guidance on anything right now.
Maybe you should study computer science. Maybe you shouldn't study computer science.
Well, it's delightful to report on it.
Yeah.
Right. Finally, Liz, in the rundown, the story that we teased a little bit last week from Stanford. Now, this is a little nuanced, right? Because there's a lot of inputs that are going into the chatbot about the kiddos that it's giving feedback on. Nonetheless, via the Hetchinger report, this is a Stanford study. Tell us about this. The title is AI Gives More Praise, Less Criticism to Black Students. We will put this into the show notes.
Yeah, so this was a study that they did where they put in identical middle school essays and they attributed them to different racial or demographic groups, which is typically not how teachers would ever enter data. But they did specifically say this is a student who is X race, may also say things like highly motivated, give their gender, any learning disabilities. And then they looked at the feedback that each essay was given.
Okay.
So
now, just so I want to really emphasize that point. So slightly atypical, right? Like the
Right.
lot of input went in. That said, as we talk about things like personal intelligence and context clues and AI gobbling up all the data, I mean, it's not impossible to imagine AI systems. Because think about what even our good friends at EDA are doing or what Magic School is reportedly trying to do, like the AI operating system. Part of this is to try to know more about the kiddos so that AI can help provide signals. So it's not impossible to think that, these systems might have more data about kids than we realize. But what was the effect? What actually happened?
Right. So basically, all the feedback patterns were consistent across all the models they used. So essays labeled as belonging to Black students received more praise, whereas those labeled as white received more criticism focused on argument, evidence, and clarity. So then students identified as Hispanic or English language learners frequently received feedback centered on grammar and proper English corrections. Female students received more affectionate language and first-person pronouns.
And that's easy data, right? I mean,
Right.
The system would have that. You did that great, like hard-hitting investigative reporting on Gemini, loading a bunch of kids' names and doing essays and feedback. So,
Right.
That's pretty straightforward. And I think actually the Hispanic and African-American names know too, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't, this was really explicit that it wasn't just assuming based on names. They did this for 600 students, so they had a lot of data. And this female, what they noticed with the females is that they received more affectionate language and first-person pronouns, such as, I love your confidence, compared to male counterparts. We do know that, teachers generally don't explicitly tell a student's race or gender, but educational platforms often store this data. So if it's connected to any of your LMS systems, it's already in there. And AI does sometimes infer from writing styles or context clues.
Sure.
The other thing to note is that humans do this too, right? Like you change your own feedback based on the
100%.
students that are in front of you, right? So and that's how AI is trained. So one of these things is it's training on what humans do, which is change their feedback style depending on who the student is. But the teacher knows the student and what the student wants, or needs, not just based on gender or race or motivation. They actually know the student. But the other thing that can happen is that it can lower the bar for students if what I'm doing is, in these examples, giving praise to Black students and telling white students things that are going to be more rigorous and improve their writing. So that's a problem. And there's this tension between personalization, because that's what we want, but at the same time, we don't want to create unequal opportunities because we're personalizing. It's a lot of tension. It's very nuanced. The article is fantastic, the one that we read from the Heschinger report, but you can go and see the full report. It was just presented a week ago at a conference in Norway. One of my other favorite places.
Caught your attention. Yeah. So we'll put a link to the Heschinger article as well as the full Stanford study for sure. All right, Liz, we're going to take another quick break and hear a little bit about, timely, given the Beneath the Surface article we're about to cover, which is schools are urged to embrace AI and phone bans at the same time. So we're going to hear a little bit about a new project we're doing called the Screen Shift, where ultimately I think the real objective here is to help schools get really good data about where they are with screen time use, because clearly it is all over the place, so that they can make more informed decisions about how to move forward as opposed to just blanket bans, whether it's cell phone bans or frankly screen time bans for K-8 or older. School districts across the country and the globe are working to balance growing community concerns about digital wellness with the very real need to build AI literacy and digital fluency. To help schools navigate that tension, EdAdvance and ChatEDU have launched the Screen Shift, a comprehensive educational technology review and insight system designed to help students prioritize quality in every digital minute. Through surveys, classroom walkthroughs, infrastructure analysis, curriculum review, and focus groups, the Screen Shift gives districts the inputs and strategic recommendations they need to drive more intentional and impactful uses of technology. To learn more, shoot us an email at chateduvance.org or visit skills21.org/AI/ScreenShift. All right, let's go beneath the surface. Now, this is really interesting. This was in Ed Week. This is Rick Hess, and he was really interviewing Michael Horn. Do you know Michael Horn at all? He's an interesting guy.
I do. I follow him on LinkedIn, and I've followed him for a long time. And interestingly, he is married to someone I went to high school with.
No way.
Yes.
That's so cool. Let's get him on the pod.
I've connections.
Yeah, it's really nice, actually. We've gotten some fairly high-profile people that were a little above our punching weight. We're like, oh, wow, you're listening? Thank you.
Awesome.
That's really cool. So who knows? Maybe Michael Horn's in the audience. But yeah, he's a disciple, not a disciple, but kind of a student of Clay Christensen.
Yes.
And has written a couple really good books, done a lot of interesting work around blended learning. And what I really like is that he's very reflective, about this stuff. He's not just sort of selling silicon snake oil here, so to speak. So Hess presents him with this really curious paradox. And you and I have been dealing with this. I've had many a superintendent that says, hey, can you facilitate my AA planning team? And also it's the team that's working on the cell phone ban.
Right.
And it seems like these things stand in contradiction to each other. And at some level, they absolutely represent a tension. But I think you and I would argue the more we dig into the screen time conversation and the more we see data in our own investigations with schools that we're working with, that this is a pretty damn good time to do a hard and honest look at screen time use and also what Horn really focuses on, which is your model. What are you actually trying to accomplish? All right, so tell us a little bit about this. It says schools are urged to embrace AI and phone bans. Can we resolve the tension? From Education Week.
Yes. So Michael Horn discusses the paradox of schools doing these two things at the same time, right? Adopting AI and implementing phone bans. So But he argues that the technology's success depends entirely on the underlying school model, and it's not just about the tool themselves. So AI offers conversational, personalized instruction that surpasses the previous kind of point-and-click tech, but it also risks increasing instructional incoherence and cognitive offloading, which we know. So he advises leaders to design learning models first and then utilize outcome-based contracts to prune ineffective tools.
Which is really interesting. We've seen that in a couple pieces of state legislation. We'll dig into that. Yeah, so Horn says specifically, and I quote, "The learning model will always matter more than the technologies being used. Educational technology in service of a model that doesn't prioritize rigor and allows students to escape by an incoherent curriculum with minimal effort and understanding will never magically produce," your favorite word, magically produce great outcomes. And so he points out, right, that districts are sometimes using as many as 3,000 tools. So you already have the potential of some lack of coherence and cohesion and thoughtful strategy. Then you throw like these 3,000 tools into the mix. And we're seeing that. We're working with some districts on their network audits or doing like walkthroughs, looking at kids or doing shadows. Like there's a lot going on. And to some degree, in some cases, it is driving a lot of incoherence. And so he's suggesting that folks should not lead with the technology, but in fact lead with the model.
You know, current AI tools are going away from the like multiple choice software to these highly conversational tools that can diagnose misunderstandings and provide targeted instruction. But we shouldn't just be implementing AI just because the world is moving in that direction.
And what's interesting, if you think about the last story from the Stanford study, like, yes, I mean, IXL and ChatGPT are totally different animals, right?
Absolutely.
Or I shouldn't say ChatGPT, or Gemini are totally different animals, or Magic School or whatever, because they're conversational, they have nuance, they feel human, like all that kind of stuff. They also have the potential to have all sorts of bias and other, kind of knock-on effects.
Yeah, I mean, with all of this AI, there's so much more variability in ed tech. So there's like massive potential for personalized instruction through random controlled trials. But we also know that there's these significant risks like hallucinations and unhealthy AI companions. So it's a tension for sure.
Yeah. Now, one thing he gets at, and it's interesting as we've covered, so you and I have a notebook that goes through all the state legislation on screen time bans, especially focusing on K-8. I think we've basically thrown in the towel on the phone thing. I mean, we personally have some issues. I think, folks should know, and we used to say quite a bit, our team at Advance has a curriculum called The Social Balance. It's designed to help students build like literacy and understanding about social media and phones. So we are disposed to the idea that we can't just ban everything, that students actually need to build skills and habits that are healthy around their use of mobile technology, including social media. And I would argue adults too.
Right. Well, and understand why schools are banning this, right? Not just like, we're banning it.
Right. And at the same time, we covered very briskly in the keynote, there were some really pretty horrible examples of kids like coming home from school and doing a little dance and saying, "Hey, and if you want more, subscribe here."
Yes.
Or like singing car jingles from YouTube. I mean, the New York Times just did a piece on like the YouTube cruft from ads that are all over the place. So, I mean, there are real needs here. I think this is all about balance, which is the primary focus of what we're trying to do with the screen shift. But yeah, one strategy that some states have turned to is this idea of outcomes-based contracting. Now, if you're an ed tech company, this sounds horrifying, right? Because basically you only get a contract if you're able to demonstrate that there's efficacy in the thing that you're doing. Yeah. And some of that's measured, right? There are standards in the ed tech world for procurement about, well, is it a peer-reviewed, product, which is, typically not cheap and not simple to pull off, as as the director of research and innovation. But, that's not Horn's problem. His thought is that if this thing isn't really delivering results and complementing a coherent system, then so be it.
Right. But why are you paying for it?
Yeah. And I think we do. It's interesting. One of the great things that I think Liz and I love about our life outside of this little podcast booth is that as I think about the 100+ schools that we work with here in Connecticut and a whole bunch of schools and universities that I'm lucky enough to work with, and you as well around the country, right? There are a handful where we can really see the model piece that Horn's talking about. There's real thought and coherence and strategy. Like, I don't know, not to feather anybody's cap, but think about Madison right now. You and I were just having a nice email conversation with one of the key leaders in that school district. This is along the coast in Connecticut. So their portrait of the graduate is a big deal. deal. It is a major driver. They have a lot of really well and thoughtful map coherence in their curriculum. And one of the things they're doing, they're part of that mastery-based consortium.
Yes,
what is that called?
The Mastery Transcript Consortium.
Do you know stuff about them? Or?
I know a lot of stuff about them.
Oh, say a little bit just for context.
Yeah, so Mastery Transcript Consortium works with schools that are interested in going to mastery-based transcripts.
As like a reporting and assessment and feedback.
Yes, instead of just
show what you know.
Right, instead of just a traditional, like, here's your 7 classes, A through F scale. Susie Bell runs it. She's awesome and was a superintendent in Connecticut.
Oh.
We did a bunch of work with the Mastery Transcript Consortium through the RESC Alliance when I was doing all kinds of work on grading for equity. So this is a big driver for schools that want to have more equitable grading and want to show what kids know. So they are all over the place doing great work, growing fast.
Interesting. So in Madison's case, right, because they're very focused on the work that they're doing around AI literacy, this is not the only lever, but like one important lever is that they have this portrait of the graduate, which got 6 or 7 skills and dispositions. And as part of the Mastery Transcript Consortium work, students are going to be able, this is in our early stages, but students can be able to demonstrate artifacts of work that show how they're using AI in a particular domain. The 2 that they identified, I believe, were critical thinking and collaboration, which make a lot of sense, right? Critical thinking is obviously a vital skill in the world of generative AI for all sorts of reasons, and collaboration as well. And it's not just human-to-human collaboration, it's human-to-AI collaboration too, right? So what does fluency look like, both with and without AI in those areas? And so, there's an example where the AI is we're not just chasing Gemini to go do gems or notebooks because they're cool, right? They're very thoughtfully trying to marry their model and their AI deployment together. And I think we can think of lots of other examples, but that was one that was coming to mind as I was reading and reflecting on Horn's observations. And interestingly, right, there is other stuff. They're concerned about what does every kid know and able to do when they walk out of the door this year. Right. So they're doing some like triage stuff right now around prompting and AI companions and healthy relationships, and sort of, they're going to do a more thoughtful AI literacy thing, but they're also making sure that kids graduate this year with those skills. So it's not like, everything goes into the mastery transcript stuff, but it's part of a strategic, coherent approach.
Yes. I'm a huge fan of mastery-based grading.
And if you want to learn more about mastery-based grading or the Madison model, email Liz at radday, R-A-D-D-A-Y, at ChatEDU.
Nope, that's not going to get me an email. But if you email me at radday at edadvance, that's edadvance.org, then I would get the email.
Liz, I wonder if we recorded on like a Thursday, if my cognitive decline would be any better or not.
I don't want to count on it being any better on a Thursday.
Certainly not from a heavy weekend of drinking, that's for sure. All right, Liz, let's carry on. It must, in fact, be time for a bright bite, an example where AI is being used to make a meaningful impact in society, culture, and all sorts of good stuff. We are very fascinated by the idea of nuclear fusion and how...
Well, you are.
I am very fascinated by the idea of nuclear fusion. There are a few markers on the field where we can say AI was worth it, right? Because we see all these risks. I just saw that, like, in public polling, generative AI is right now ranking below ICE in terms of public opinion.
Wow.
Yeah, that's not great.
Yeah, some of the shenanigans going on with all the leaders of these places are...
Yeah, I mean, when Meta is trying to create patents so that you can post using AI after your death on Facebook is like probably not contributing to the public perception. All right, but we digress. So where these bright bites can make meaningful impacts in our society and culture will be great. Like whether that's drug discovery, we've covered, when you look at the bright bites in aggregate, it feels really good. Like there's really important stuff going on here. But if you want to see a huge breakthrough, it would be fusion. Now, interestingly, we have covered a story where Google is working with a company called Commonwealth Energy. They're out of Cambridge, but they're building their first fusion reactor somewhere outside of DC. Might be strategic on purpose. And AI is a very important part of trying to accelerate pulling fusion off. And so Microsoft, not to be outdone, and actually the fusion reactor for Google and Commonwealth Energy is intended to come online in 2030. So not to be outdone, Microsoft is now contracted with a company called Helion to come out with their first nuclear fusion reactor in 2028. So they pull this off. This would be a bright bite what do we call it? Like the kids say maxing all the time. This would be bright byte maxing.
All righty.
All right, tell us about what Microsoft's doing.
Yeah, so this is from the Seattle Times. Microsoft is constructing a massive data center campus in Chelan County, Washington State, to support its AI expansion. They are creating an energy demand equivalent to a medium-sized city. But to meet the need and bypass local power constraints, Microsoft has contracted Everett-based startup Helion to deliver the world's first commercial fusion power by 2028. That's only 2 years away.
I know.
I mean, and Helion faces significant skepticism from nuclear experts regarding its aggressive timeline and lack of transparency, because the success of the project is critical as data centers increasingly compete with residential utilities for these limited renewable energy sources.
It's funny that the nuclear people, because this is fusion as opposed to like traditional nuclear reactors. And so they have a reason to be like, I don't know, because frankly, whoever pulls off fusion wins, right? This solves everything. It solves power. It solves agriculture. It solves desalination. It solves a lot.
Okay, I believe you.
Am I more passionate about this than world models?
Yes.
It's more tangible.
I don't know.
And frankly, it would be a world model is not necessarily going to be a great bright bite. Although if they pull off world models, it's going to advance. I don't know.
So this is backed by $1 billion in funding from investors like people like Sam Altman, but they've already broken ground. Their technology utilizes, this is so far above my head, but it utilizes magnets to heat and compress particles, which recently reached 150 million degrees Celsius, but it needs to be 250 to 300 million degrees for commercial operations. So
you get all this heat, and then the heat's able to generate power, right? But the heat's not generated by causing like power hungry stuff. That's
like
why
you're not burning coal.
Yeah, and there's no toxic byproduct from this. This is why it's cool.
So far that they know of.
Okay.
So no fusion device yet has produced more electricity than it consumes, which is kind of what you just said. So there's a lot of nuclear engineering experts that doubt Helion's ability to meet this 2028 contractual deadline. You've got 2 years, guys. But Helion faces financial penalties from Microsoft if they fail to deliver power on schedule.
Talk about outcomes-based assessment or outcomes-based procurement.
Yeah. I mean, Microsoft is at the same time pursuing other energy avenues, including a natural gas fire plant in West Texas with Chevron.
Which is highly polluting and causes all sorts of carbon emissions.
Exactly. But they've pledged to be carbon neutral by 2030. So, a little bit of tension there.
Uh-huh.
And their carbon emissions have actually increased 23% since 2020 because of the expansion of AI and cloud computing. But still, it's on the table that by 2030, they should be carbon negative.
Yeah, and that's just Microsoft, right? So if you assume that Microsoft is 23% up, Google's 23% up, Anthropic's 23%, well, whatever, they weren't a thing before, Meta, Grok, blah, blah, blah. This is one of the bummers is that they're all essentially doing the same thing times 6 or times 5.
Yeah.
Nonetheless, so this county, their data centers need to be on a separate grid infrastructure. This is really interesting too. So data centers are one of the reasons that there is such a bad attitude about in the United States, legitimately, about AI. And one of the important pledges, I believe this is now codified in law or executive order from the Trump administration, is that the data centers they don't really want them on the grid, because when they're on the grid, all of a sudden, like people's energy bills are going up dramatically, and their lights are going off. And in Memphis, thanks to Elon's macro hard and macro hard too, which are his two big data centers. So they really need to figure out how to be separate from the grid infrastructure and ideally self-generating, right? So that's where these data centers could potentially, there's a water impact as well. It's complicated, but if they're off the grid, if they're generating their own power from renewables or for things like nuclear fusion, like maybe, and they're solving for cancer at the same time, maybe they're people's estimation of AI will be a little higher, but right now it ain't great. So Google, Microsoft, Helion, Commonwealth Energy, we are rooting for you in 2028.
So this is like a 2-year ahead bright bite.
It's 2-year ahead bright bite, but I couldn't help but throw it in there.
Potential to be a very, very bright bite.
Yes, when we're on episode 312, we'll know whether or not this worked out. And interestingly, I think we'll get there, Liz. This is 109, coming up on 110 next week, which is very cool.
Great.
And rapidly approaching 100,000 downloads and all sorts of good stuff. And for that, I would say we are all, if you made it to this point, we are super, super grateful, right? So everybody who listens, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. If you have not yet followed, please follow or like or share or do a review, all the things that you can do. YouTube, Spotify, Apple, we're just super appreciative. And so with that, Dr. Rade, it is now time to
say Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
Happy Mother's Day, Mom.
And now we can roll the credits.
As always, we'd love to hear what you think. So please let us know at ChatEDU@edadvance.org. That's EDADVANCE.org. And also rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you are using. ChatEDU is brought to you by EdAdvance, the nonprofit regional education service center in Litchfield, Connecticut. This episode of ChatEDU is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. ChatEDU is recorded, edited, and produced by Andre Angelo and Justin Pasco, whose dedication and expertise bring our discussions to life. ChatEDU's executive producer is the multi-talented rock star Cameron Audia. Additionally, we are grateful for the support of our colleague Gary Robinson, and we appreciate his time and talents. And of course, a big ChatEDU shout out to our fearless leader and executive director, Jonathan Costa, for inspiring the pod. And finally, a heartfelt thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey exploring the thoughtful and innovative integration of AI in education.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Costa, and I am the executive director at EdAdvance, and I want you to know how much we appreciate our listeners. If you enjoy the podcast, feel free to explore EdAdvance's other AI services, which include customized professional learning of all kinds, conferences, our new middle and high school student AI literacy course, and our educator and leader micro-credential, co-sponsored by the Southern Connecticut State University Office of Workforce and Lifelong Learning. Just visit skills21.org/AI to learn more. That's all for now, and thank you for listening to ChatEDU.